Well, Energy Minister Chris Bowen has accused the Liberal Party of being out of touch, suggesting it is letting the National Party run the coalition's climate agenda. It's, of course, ahead of the Liberals and Nationals holding climate policy talks on Sunday. Joining me live is Deputy Nationals Leader Kevin Hogan. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. What's your response to Minister Bowen's comments there?
Well, I think the main person out of touch, Holly, is Chris Bowen. I don't think he has an appreciation for families' energy bills and the fact that people are struggling to pay their energy bills. I don't think he has an appreciation for the large businesses and businesses around Australia who are asking for government bailouts because they can't get energy affordability that they can compete. So I think he's the person out of touch. But look, looking forward to the discussion tomorrow. We're very conscious that China, India, and the United States, who are all the biggest emitters of carbon around the world, are not signed up to net zero 2050. So we need another approach to this. We need to cut carbon emissions responsibly, and we think tying that to the OECD countries and like-minded economies that we should cut emissions to the extent that they are. That would mean we'd be cutting emissions at about half the rate that Labor want to, and there is a $7 to $9 trillion price on how much carbon Labor want to cut.
Okay, so what exactly does this pathway look like for the coalition? What will be ironed out in tomorrow's meeting?
Well, we as Nationals, we announced our plan a week and a half ago. So what we basically said is, yes, let's cut emissions, let's cut them and tie them to the average of the OECD countries and cut emissions by the amount they are. We need to be tied to that. That will give us that discipline. But what that analysis also showed was just how expensive Labor's plan is, and we don't think Australia can afford that. And I say that, Holly, because I see nearly every week a company that's needs a government bailout or small businesses who say they can't afford their energy bills, or families who can't afford their energy bills. So we want a better, better, fairer plan, and that's what tomorrow's about.
Would you say that the National Party is leading the climate agenda, like Minister Bowen claims?
Well, we're certainly, I mean, look, we said after the last election that we would review the net zero 2050 policy. That was 6 months ago. We haven't hidden that fact. We've been very transparent about that. We've announced our plan. But, I commend also my Liberal Party colleagues who the overwhelming majority voted also that they thought that net zero was too expensive for families and businesses in this country. So a lot of goodwill now between the two coalition partners to nut out a deal, see where the common ground is. From what I can see, there's a lot of common ground. Get more into some of the nuances of the policy and the plan and announce that to the Australian public tomorrow, which I think the Australian public, Holly, after this weekend are going to see two very distinct options. They can look at Labor and Greens' plan, which is to cut emissions 3 times faster than a lot of the rest of the globe. The 3 biggest emitters aren't even signed up. They can sign up to Labor's plan, which is going to be a $7 to $9 million cost to the Australian economy, or sign up to ours, reasonable emission cuts, but a lot cheaper and fairer for the Australian community.
I mean, there's a lot of strong points that you're making there, saying, Australians at the end of the day want more affordable and reliable energy. But what about the moderates who fear that they won't be able to keep their inner city seats, let alone gain new ones? So unless the Liberal Party and the coalition wins more metro seats, it will just always be a voice in opposition, won't it?
Well, look, I don't take that view, Holly. I think the Australian community, and that includes metropolitan Sydney, metropolitan Melbourne, metropolitan Brisbane, metropolitan Adelaide, metropolitan Perth, they realise that they can't afford their power bills either. They know that small businesses in their community and industry around Australia can't afford their energy bills either. We haven't really had this parallel in the sense of how we're going to fight this previously, but I think that the metropolitan city electorates can be up for this because they don't want Australia to go broke. They want to be able to afford their energy bills as well. And I think they'll see two very distinct plans. And I think we can win city seats with this plan.
Will the Nationals agree to the Paris Agreement?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to preempt, and look, I don't think, with all due respect, the negotiations between the two parties and the panel that makes up that have finished their negotiations. But look, Paris, the way we look at it, doesn't hold binding targets, and we don't want binding targets, so we don't see that. It does give us a bit of information about what countries are actually doing, how much they are cutting emissions. We want to see that, like from the OECD countries. So look, that's all going to be negotiated. I won't preempt what the decision around that will be, but there is a lot of goodwill to do a deal.
Okay, Kevin Hogan, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks for joining us. No doubt we'll speak to you after tomorrow's meeting. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Holly.